And welcome to Season 2, Episode 4 of Hazardous Verbal Waste. I am your host, Shiro-chan. Today is Sunday, April 28th, 2019. Got a lot of cool stuff to cover this week, though there won't be any spoilers for Endgame as I haven't seen it yet. So let's get right down to it, shall we? In Yu-Gi-Oh! News, this past week we had a new ban list drop. It will go into effect on April 29th. That would be tomorrow. We have a few new additions to the ban list, a few new additions to the limited list, and some new cards coming off the list. Let's take a quick look here. First on the ban list, we have Summon Sorceress. That is the Link 3 monster. Two monsters with the same type except tokens. If this card is Link Summon, you can special summon one monster from your hand in defense position to your opponent's zone this card points to. You can target one face-up monster this card points to, special summon one monster from your deck with the same type as that monster to a zone this card points to, but negate its effect. You can only use this effect of Summon Sorceress once per turn. That is a large blow to those decks that use Summon Sorceress, especially those decks that spam out the Link monsters. Also on the ban list is number 95 Galaxy Eyes Dark Matter Dragon. That is the rank 9 monster. Uses 3 level 9 monsters. You can also Xyz summon this card by using a Galaxy Eyes Xyz monster you control as the Xyz material. Xyz materials attached to that monster also become Xyz materials on this card. Cannot be used as an Xyz material for an Xyz summon. When this card is Xyz summoned, you can send 3 Dragon type monsters with different names from your deck to the graveyard. Your opponent banishes 3 monsters from their deck. You can detach one Xyz material from this card. This card can make up to 2 attacks on monsters during each battle phase this turn. Not exactly sure why that got banned. I haven't been up on the meta as much as I should be. I would assume that it really sucks for those people that are running the 5-headed dragon decks. Also on the ban list is the Phantom Knights Rank Up Magic launch. I know a lot of decks have been utilizing this card of late. It's a quick play spell card. During the main phase, target one Dark Xyz monster you control with no Xyz materials. Special summon from your extra deck one Dark Xyz monster that is 1 rank higher than that monster you control by using it as the Xyz material. And if you do, attach this card to it as additional Xyz material. This special summon is treated as an Xyz summon. Xyz materials attached to it also become Xyz materials on the summoned monster. During your main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one Dark Xyz monster you control. Attach one the Phantom Knights monster from your hand to that monster as Xyz material. I do know a lot of Phantom Knights decks are going to be feeling the hurt from this one. In the limited list, we have a few cards. Looks like 3 new additions to the limited list. First up is Lady Debug. It's a level 4 effect monster. If this card is normal or special summon, you can add 1 level 3 or lower Cybers monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Lady Debug once per turn. Pretty sure any decks that are utilizing the Cyberse monsters are going to feel a bit of a pinch on this one. Again, I really can't speak to the meta personally, but I'm sure if any of you have any thoughts on this, please let us know. I'll give you the details on how to contact us later in the episode. The next card up on the limited list is Phantom Sky Blaster. Phantom Sky Blaster, level 4, Dark Fiend. When this card is normal or flip summon, you can special summon any number of Sky Blaster tokens up to the number of monsters you control. Once per turn during your standby phase, you can inflict 300 damage to your opponent for each Sky Blaster monster you control. Sky Blaster monsters you control cannot declare an attack during the turn you activate this effect. I do know that there have been a lot of Sky Blaster decks dominating the meta lately, and this is a big blow to those decks. Also on the limited list is Sky Striker Ace Kagari. It is a Link 1 Link monster, one non-fire Sky Striker Ace monster. If this card is special summon, you can target one Sky Striker spell in your graveyard, add it to your hand, gains 100 attack for each spell in your graveyard. You can only special summon Sky Striker Ace Kagaris once per turn. I know that I myself have tried to build a Sky Striker deck. I know that they have been dominating the meta in the last few cycles, and limiting Kagari to one could hurt, but might not. We'll have to see. And the first card on the semi-limited list, in fact the only change to the semi-limited list this format, is Super Polymerization. It is a quick play spell. Discard one card, fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck using materials from either side of the field as fusion materials. Cards and effects cannot be activated in response to this card's activation. I know with Cyber Dragons and similar decks being popular these days, this could be a bad thing, but it looks like Super Polymerization might be getting to the point where it's not as useful anymore, given that there are a lot better theme-specific alternatives available. We'll just have to keep an eye on things and see how this one goes. And the card that is being removed from the limited list altogether is Miscellaneous Saurus. It is a level 4 dinosaur type. During either player's main phase, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard. During this main phase, dinosaur type monsters you control are unaffected by your opponent's activated effects. You can banish any number of dinosaur type monsters from your graveyard, including this card. Special summon one dinosaur type monster from your deck with a level equal to the total number of monsters banished to activate this effect, but destroy it during the end phase. You can only use this effect of Miscellaneous Saurus once per turn. I honestly don't know why this was even on the limited list to begin with. It started off as limited and is no longer limited. If any of you can tell me why, please let me know. Again, I will give you the information on how to contact the show at the end of the episode. I personally believe that dinosaurs are just kind of not that great anymore. Again, my personal opinion. Also in Yu-Gi-Oh! News, Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duelist Link Evolution has some new gameplay videos released this past week. You can find those at gonintendo.com. Looks like there are 2 videos available of gameplay. You can check them out. I'll provide a link in the show notes. That's pretty much all we have for Yu-Gi-Oh! News this week. On to the next segment. In Nintendo news, latest Nintendo Switch update makes games load faster and run better. A couple of weeks ago, Nintendo released the new 8.0 update for the Nintendo Switch, which added a healthy slab of new features and improvements to the console. It added a new save transfer data option, a new zoom feature, and apparently also a new boost mode. After the update went live, homebrewers, as they do, dove under the hood of the system to get a better look at the changes the update made. And what they discovered is the aforementioned boost mode, which isn't listed in the official patch notes. With the boost mode, the Nintendo Switch's CPU can now overclock itself in specific situations to 1.75 GHz, which, as you may know, is a considerable improvement on its stock 1 GHz speed. As a result, apparently games like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey, with their new patches installed, are loading noticeably faster than they previously did. And this is because of the new boost mode. Basically, what is happening is the games are overclocking the CPU to 1.75 GHz during loading screens. And then once the game is loaded in, the CPU will return to 1 GHz. For The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild specifically, this means loading save files is down 10 seconds. Fast travel is improved by 8 seconds, and entering shrines is now 3 seconds faster. This may seem like marginal improvements, and technically they are, but they are pretty noticeable and notable to not even mention. Of course, going forward, games will now be able to take advantage of this new overclocking, which should mean faster load times on the console and general performance improvement. Also in Nintendo news, cheaper Nintendo Switch model coming in June, report says. A new, cheaper version of the Nintendo Switch will launch by the end of June, according to a source speaking to Bloomberg. This is at least the second time this year that we've heard reports about a less expensive Switch model, as the Wall Street Journal reported in March that Nintendo would release a pared-down, less expensive Switch system in 2019. That report also mentioned a second new Switch model, one that has enhanced features that is targeted at avid gamers. However, the specs won't match PS4 Pro or Xbox One X, the report said. Bloomberg sources, meanwhile, suggest that the current Switch model will get a modest upgrade in 2019. However, it's unclear what the upgrade will entail. Whatever the case, Bloomberg reported that the more powerful Switch system is not in the works. The Wall Street Journal's report suggested that the new, less expensive Switch would cut features like controller vibration to save on costs. Bloomberg's story had no details on that. It could be a big week for Nintendo news, as the company is holding its next earnings report on April 25th, which actually just happened. It could be here that Nintendo confirms it's working on new consoles. That also might not happen. We'll have to wait a few days to find out for sure, and I will let you guys know as soon as I find out. Another big news story surrounding Nintendo currently are the rumors and reports about the company launching the Switch in China with the help of Tencent. Nintendo might share more details about that during its earnings report. The new Switch consoles are rumored to be announced at E3 and then released relatively soon thereafter. And keep checking back, and I will let you guys know as soon as I have more information regarding that. That's all we have for Nintendo news this week. On to the next segment. Before we get to our next segment, a quick word from our sponsors. You know, when I'm hungry and I want something to eat, but there's nothing prepared in the house, it sucks. But with Blue Apron, I don't have to worry about having to go to the grocery store, portioning out the ingredients. Everything is done for me. You simply choose your meals. Their chef-designed recipes include balanced Mediterranean meals, quick one-pan dinners, and top-rated customer favorites. They guarantee the freshness of all their ingredients and deliver them in an insulated box right to your door. Following the step-by-step instructions, you'll experience the magic of cooking recipes that their chefs create with your family's tastes in mind. I know it's super easy for me to do. I can't cook worth a darn, but with their instructions and all the ingredients perfectly portioned out, I'm a chef. So if you want to try out Blue Apron for yourself, go to blue-apron.evyy.net/HVW podcast and you can save $60 over your first 3 boxes. Sign up now at blue-apron.evyy.net/HVW podcast. Again, that's blue-apron.evyy.net/HVW podcast and start cooking. In tech news, Microsoft issues important Windows 10 upgrade warning. Windows 10's most significant upgrade to date is almost ready, but Microsoft has now issued an important warning for everyone who wants to get it. In a new advisory, Microsoft has warned users that they will need up to twice as much free storage on their PCs to receive Windows 10 1903, the upgrade which finally gives all users control over Windows updates. The new requirement will apply to all versions of Windows 10, Home, Pro, and Enterprise. The new minimum is 32 GB, double the previous 16 GB stipulation of 32-bit Windows 10, and almost 40% more than the 64-bit editions. For users with modern PCs, this is unlikely to be a problem. But for older PCs, or users who consume a lot of storage, this could prove a more problematic hurdle, with some finding they need to buy a new hard drive and migrate their data. Moreover, Windows specialist Paul Thurrott believes Microsoft's move will open the floodgates to far larger requirements in the near future, saying, "I'm surprised it took so long to get to 32GB, and I see a 64GB minimum happening in the near future." So, if you have an older PC or simply don't want to give up additional space equivalent to 4,000 12-megapixel photos, should you just skip the Windows 10 1903? In a word, no. The sad fact is, Windows 10 users need control over their updates because they have been getting worse, not better. Windows 10 updates have caused serious problems in October, deleting personal data, November, Windows downgraded itself, and February, breaking app updates, while April has proven so problematic it could be referred to as awful April. So yes, you need Windows 10 1903, and yes, you may have to offload or delete some data or buy new hardware to get it. But this is an upgrade which is too important to skip. You have been warned. That is all we have for tech news this week. On to the next segment. In movie news, Kevin Smith drops hour-long spoiler-filled Avengers Endgame review. Kevin Smith has seen Avengers Endgame, and he has a lot to say about it. Smith recorded a special episode of his Fat Man Beyond podcast that has him talking about the movie for over an hour. Smith found it to be a singular, unique event that captures the spirit of comic books like no other movie before it. "There ain't never been a movie like this before, man," he says. "I don't give a F what anybody says. In terms of build-up to a final conclusion, I've said this about other movies before. This one is about the absolute closest you get to a live-action comic book. This movie felt like an annual, like a giant-sized annual or a big multi-part crossover standalone event. It was just epic." You can watch the video on YouTube, but be warned that it does contain spoilers. Avengers Endgame will break the box office opening weekend record with a 3-day total in the range of 350 to 400 million. It already broke the record set by Star Wars The Force Awakens in 2015 for highest grossing opening day with 156.7 million on Friday, including a record-setting 60 million in Thursday night previews. Endgame benefits from having the widest box office opening of all time. The film is also expected to have the first 1 billion opening weekend at the global box office, which actually, according to some sources, it already has. Endgame is receiving praise from critics and fans, including comicbook.com's Brandon Davis. "The final movie in Marvel's Infinity Saga is a masterpiece," Davis writes in his review. "It's an absolute spectacle which needs to be watched on the biggest screen possible. It's a love letter to fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In fact, I'd argue that Avengers Endgame is the film event of our lifetime and lives up to every bit of global hype it has garnered. It is setting a new standard and raising the bar for event films and likely will not be matched in this generation of filmmaking." Avengers Endgame is directed by Anthony and Joe Russo from a screenplay by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely. The film's ensemble cast includes Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, Chris Evans as Captain America, Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner the Hulk, Chris Hemsworth as Thor, Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye Ronan, Don Cheadle as War Machine, Paul Rudd as Ant-Man, Brie Larson as Captain Marvel, Karen Gillan as Nebula, Danae Garua as Okoye, Bradley Cooper as Rocket Raccoon, and Josh Brolin as Thanos. That's pretty much all we have for movie news this week. On to the next segment. As an added feature that I started last episode, from now on, every episode I will play some promos from other shows that I am trading promotions with. After the promos are done, we'll get to the final thoughts. Until then, here are a couple shows you may want to check out.
Hey guys, we're Chuck and Brad. We're two comedians who do the Chuck and Brad podcast, a pop culture podcast based out of Rhode Island.
We just wanted to let you know that we're going on a short comedy tour called Chuck and Brad Reimagine the Avengers.
It's our own comedic retelling of the original Avengers movie, and we're touring the shows the same weekend that Avengers Endgame comes out. So come get a refresher and a new spin on the original Avengers movie before you go see Endgame.
Thursday, April 25th, we'll be in Hartford, Connecticut at the CT Comedy Theater with BJ Quagan, Andrew Morgan, and Stosh Makita.
Saturday, April 27th, we'll be in New York City at the Pit Loft with Impractical Jokers tour opener Jiggy, Impractical Jokers writer Casey Jost, and UCB veteran Lisa Kleinman.
Sunday, April 28th, we'll be at Laugh Boston with John Tilson, Logan O'Brien, Tyler Swain, and Dan Hall. All event info and tickets at chuckandbradpodcast.com.
Every night we'll have the comics open up the show and we'll close with our live retelling of the Avengers.
And for a tiny bit of background, we've done the podcast for 10 years. We've had on great guests like Jeff Tremaine, the director of the Jackass movies, the bands Bowling for Soup, Less Than Jake, Real Big Fish, Big D and the Kids Table, and many, many more.
And if you're a big podcast listener, you might know me from Tell 'em Steve Dave. I work on film projects for the podcast Tell 'em Steve Dave, which is made up of Walton Bryant from AMC's Comic Book Men and Quinn from True TV's Impractical Jokers. I consistently do the film work for the Tell 'em Steve Dave Patreon. So come on out, support this very weird live comedy show, and hopefully more and more podcasts will start doing their own live alternative shows.
Once again, that's Chuck and Brad Reimagine the Avengers, New York City, Hartford, and Boston. See you at the end of the month. chuckandbradpodcast.com.
Looking into the darkness, you can feel your heart racing, the heaviness of sorrow and dread take control, and the voice inside you says, "Don't go in there." Now join your hosts Ashley Ernie and Bill Reed as we venture down the weird and mysterious.
Find the Don't Go In There podcast on your favorite podcast listening app, and remember, don't go in there.
Well, that brings us to the end of yet another segment of Hazardous Verbal Waste. I hope you've enjoyed listening to the show. If you would like to make a comment, suggestion, or would just like to say hi, there are several ways you can do so. You can use the contact form on our website at hazardousverbal.com. You can email us at hazardousverbal@gmail.com. You can get a hold of us through Skype and leave a voice message, which I'll be happy to play in a future episode. The Skype ID is Ichimoto1. You can also check us out on Facebook through the J North Media page. You can also get a hold of us through Instagram, Twitter, or Tumblr. I believe all three of those is HVW Podcast. You can check out the show notes from last episode for the specific links for the Instagram, Tumblr, and Twitter accounts. That's pretty much all we have for this week. I'm Shiro-chan, signing off. Peace.